This is episode number 42 of DevOps Paradox with Darren Pope and Victor Farsick. I am Darren.
And I'm Victor.
We're discussing today what to talk about. Sometimes we plan way ahead. Today is not one of those days. But based on some of the recent news, Zebio Labs merging with CollabNet, it sort of brought up the idea of sometimes the person that got you to X may not be the same person to get you to Y.
Oh yeah. I mean, most of the time it's not, I believe. So let's say when you're a small company, 20 people, 30 people, your main preoccupation is technical, right? How do you manage with such a small team to create a great product? But then when you're a person, when you're a company that has wants to have 500 people, then we are already talking about a completely different game, about having more than one product, about having a sales organization, about professional services, about expanding all that. And I do believe that it is very unlikely that a person who can get you to 50 people company is not the same person who can get you to, let's say, 500. I'm throwing numbers over here, right? But because it's a completely different skill set. We are talking about transitioning from something that is mostly technical to something that is more business-oriented, from a single product, small team, to many people, from everybody working as one to having multiple organizations within that company, and so on and so forth. So I do believe it is a completely different game. And I'm kind of very skeptical when I see that the initial CTO or CEO of a company, when it was tiny, is the same CTO or CEO that tries to bring that company to the next level. I'm always skeptical because then I start asking myself, okay, is that the right person? Can he really, if he can do the work of a tiny company, can he really do that same work on a much larger scale? Again, not something against a person, any specific person, but about different skill set. And to me, a great example is Solomon Hykes. He's the CEO, CTO. I think he was the CTO of Docker. Amazing guy. I think he's brilliant. Really, truly amazing. The only problem I have with Solomon is that he didn't step down from Docker sooner. So I love the guy, admire his skills, and at the same time, I'm disappointed that he didn't step down sooner. Which is kind of contradictory, isn't it? You want the person you like not to step down. That's what our instinct tells us. But I think it's the other way around. And I'm using now Solomon only. This is not an episode where I want to pick on Docker. I just used him as an example. The first name that popped into my mind. It applies to many different other areas or companies.
But there are some that have been able to go there. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Richard Branson.
Yes.
And I think those are the outliers, though.
That's more exception. So I do think, I mean, we can probably put Steve Jobs into the same bucket, right? I'm not saying that there are no people like that. I'm just saying that it requires a different skill set. And it is highly unlikely that the person will be able to do equally well both types of jobs, even though it's the same title. I'm not saying that there are no exceptions. There are exceptions, definitely.
Okay, so let's play those names that we just threw out. Mm-hmm. And we'll leave Steve Jobs in there for just a minute. Each one of those men that we just listed out have been the high-performing, typically CEO of each of those companies. I don't have an MBA. I don't say that I am. But here's the thing that's interesting about all of those, other than Steve Jobs getting fired and then coming back. They were all running multiple companies at the same time. Look at Branson, right? All the Virgin properties. You had Steve Jobs, although he got fired from Apple, that gave him the ability to create Next, which then got reacquired by Apple. And this little film studio no one has ever heard of called Pixar. You look at, who's the other guy that we had in the list? Oh, Elon Musk. How many companies is he actively in right now? And even Bezos, right? Bezos, everything's sort of under that Amazon brand, but there's between the Amazon studios and Amazon or AWS, he's still at the head of all those things.
Yes. So let me rephrase what I was saying. I think that I was referring more to CTO roles. Because all those people, I'm not sure what were their official roles, but they were all very, very business oriented. I was more referring now from technical aspects, CTO role. And I'm sure that if we would Google now, we would find examples of that happening as well.
That would probably be rare, though. Okay, I agree with you. I just thought I had some good stories there, but okay, whatever.
So yeah, see, unfortunately, business is not my thing. I don't really know how that works. And amazing, all those people you mentioned are amazing. But CTO is, I think, different. Because let's say that you're a small company. What are you trying to do as a small company in today's world? In most cases, that is, you live from investors' money and you want to attract as many users as possible, right? You want to convince the world that your product is amazing, most likely giving it for free. And then some time passes and you need to grow. And then suddenly it's not about convincing people anymore. It's about convincing people to give you money. And that's not necessarily the same product, as we're seeing all over and over again. The product people want to use and product people are going to pay money for is not necessarily the same thing. And the portfolio you are planning to build is quite different, and so on and so forth. At least that's my theory. I might be wrong, though.
Well, I think that's still partially true for today. I think as in the next 5 to 10 years, as the next big generation, the millennial generation, starts to take control of the CFO, the purse strings, as more of those people come in, their buying habits may be different. Now, in super large companies, maybe not, right? Because those things are just institutions. But for medium-sized, I'm going to define medium-sized as 1,000 to 5,000 people, person company. I think the buying habits could become very different, and I wonder if the free or freemium model is going to continue on.
I do think that the trend of people in companies adopting stuff that they like is going to continue. And it's only going to increase, I believe. Now, at one moment comes the point where company wants to decide to make it official, kind of, okay, so, look at this. 1/3 of my people are using Docker, or 1/3 of my people are using Jenkins, or 1/3 of my people are using whatever else. Why don't we make a deal with the company behind that product? Give them money and get something in exchange, so that we are more secure in our investment. And when I say investment, I don't mean investment only in money, but mostly investment in time. So we want to now take this more seriously. So we want some enterprise product support, whatever it is on top of that. Now, where it becomes kind of tricky is that when it gets to that point, then the requirements of that same product change. Like when I'm adopting Docker Enterprise, after my engineers already adopted Docker, then my requirements are not necessarily the same as those that made my engineers like the product. Or for example, Jenkins Enterprise, right? It's different set of requirements that are asked for on top of the same product, only for the fact that now we are paying for it. Because I believe because those people making this, people adopting something and people making decisions to make it used officially in a company are having different criteria about what matters.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that sort of a subtext I heard there, and you may not have meant it this way, but let's say a company does invest into, let's say a client company invests into a vendor company. And because they're wanting a feature. So they're willing to pony up the money to pay for a feature. That feature, if properly vetted, could help not just that company, but the larger community as a whole. Custom coding, right? I came back from years ago. One of the companies I worked for, we sold a packaged piece of software. Then we would customize the implementation for each client. But a lot of the time there were new feature requests that came in that were actually got baked back into the core product that everybody got to take advantage of.
Yes.
I think that's where external, I'm going to air quote, investment, not necessarily for it's basically pay to play. Let's just boil it down. Right? It's like I'm paying you, I would like this feature. Make it so. Knowing that everybody's going to get it. It's not just for me, it's just everybody. And this is just helping things get it there faster.
Yeah. But when you're deciding, when you're the person who initiates that process, okay, so I need this feature, instead of waiting that somebody else requests that feature, then you're more in control of how that feature will be. Which is basically the reason why I believe big companies are contributing to open source. I don't think that Red Hat and Microsoft and Google and so on and so forth are contributing and investing heavily in open source because of the goodness of their hearts. They're investing in it because they want their needs to enter that project instead of needs of somebody else. And what you're mentioning, I believe, is very similar, except that instead of me investing my engineering effort into that and molding it to my needs, I'm paying for that, right? So that's when request to vendor comes, I need this enterprise feature. That's the same thing, except the way how to accomplish it is different.
Either you have the time, I can commit resources to code, or I have cash because I don't have the skill set to commit people.
Exactly. I think that most companies would rather commit people than pay cash to improve something that they really need. But more often than not, they don't have that skill set. Like how many companies can seriously contribute to, let's say, Kubernetes? Not many.
Not many.
So it's not only of I prefer cash, but it's also very often that's my only option. I would actually even go as far as saying that though that's tiny percentage of companies who can do that, they do not tend to even buy enterprise products because they know that they can add the things that they're missing to the project itself, the open source project itself. And they have the skill set, so why would I buy a feature when I can develop it and contribute it back, or not, depending on my strategy.
And all of this, let's play out this scenario here. CTO X has been in place. He was the person that was able to get them from bare metal to virtualization. However, this CTO X is failing at getting it from virtualization to containerization.
In a simplified way, yes.
Right. I mean, it's highly simplified. So when does sometimes those CTOs can't see the forest for the trees. Some of them are wise. It's like, okay, this is beyond my skill set. I need to step out. But sometimes not. Sometimes it's like, oh, we're just going to keep, or the exact opposite. We're going virtualization. They're getting pressure from their board of directors. It's like, look, we're falling behind more and more every day. We've got to get to this Kubernetes thing because I read it in a newspaper article. It was in Financial Times. Kubernetes is the hotness. Why aren't you doing Kubernetes? Well, we don't need to. We just need to stay with virtualization. That CTO is not long for that place.
And it's hard. I'm not sure whether I would be able to do it. I've been thinking about it, and if I would be a CTO of a highly successful small company, but highly successful, and everybody would be saying, Victor, you did a great job. Look how successful you made us. I'm not sure that I would be able to see it for myself that, okay, now it's time to step down. You know, I honestly don't think that I would be able to do that. Because you just did something great. And you're going to step down? Really? It's more that very few people have that capability. I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't. So it's more that company needs to force that change, maybe?
Well, maybe not force, but nudge. Like rethink.
Yeah, kind of. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to push you down the stairs. Okay. Potato.
Okay. Well, okay, so let's play this out. Let's say we got CTO X got us from 50 to, let's just call it 200, right? A more reasonable number. And the CTO was able to say, okay, we did all this. This is good. It's been a couple of years. This company has grown to more than what I want to be. My story, and I'm not a C-level, but most of the companies I have worked for, except for one, have been under 100 people or less in general. So I tend to thrive in smaller organizations. When I'm just a number in the faceless thousands, I still perform well. I think I perform well, at least in my head I do. But I don't feel like I'm contributing as much. And that could be the same thing, same level as CTO. Some CTOs love the startup. Think about a bell curve. You got CTOs that are in the first 20% of the bell curve. And then you have CTOs that work in that 20 to 50 to 60%. And then you have the CTOs that are the maintenance people. Right? They come in after everything's sort of stabilized, and now we've got a long-term person.
I mean, put it this way. If you're a 20, 30, 50 people company, right? CTO, you're most likely coding significant percentage of your time, right?
Yes.
If you're 500, would you be coding? Probably not.
Doubtful. You're doing frontline. You're helping your frontline. You're probably having to deal with board members. You just got stuff. Even in privately held, you're still going to have those kinds of political business things.
Exactly. So, for example, let's say that if I would be a CTO of a tiny company, that would be kind of okay, because I would still be able to be a techie and do my stuff. And I most likely wouldn't stop doing techie stuff when we grow.
I would hesitate to say, even you may have the title of CTO in that size of company, but really you're architect / lead developer.
Exactly. But then that's stepping down in a way.
To some people, yes. Yeah.
But then, if you have a CTO that becomes effectively, not necessarily in title, effectively becomes a lead developer, how would that reflect on company workforce? There is a person who was Alpha and Omega, and now there is a new Alpha and Omega in our company, and that person that we admire is now under him. He's a tech lead or architect or whatever would be the title, right? That might not be a good idea, simply of the perception of the people working in that company.
I'll use an example. A friend of mine, and I worked for him at a startup, and I followed his career. We've known each other now for going on 20 years. And stepping back and trying to be objective, because he's like a brother to me. Being objective, looking at his career, where he's excelled is helping people get from being stuck in the past to getting them into the present and moving towards the future. That is his amazing ability. And not everybody can do that. But if I was to take him and drop him in to be the CTO of Salesforce, it wouldn't be the same thing, because that's not where he shines.
Does anybody shine in Salesforce?
Shh. Okay. I'm not going to say anything. Salesforce is sales. Well, okay. So let's talk about Mark Benioff for a second. And I'm not going to slam him because, all right, so anybody was going to slam Salesforce. That's another large company that has been successful.
Yes, definitely.
And they tend, from the outside, again, whether you love Salesforce or hate Salesforce, it doesn't matter. But they've been able to help breathe life into ecosystems that you probably wouldn't think about. There's a couple of small companies that were acquired by Salesforce that has now been able to keep companies alive because of the acquisition. Another one, although this probably isn't that same story, with when Salesforce bought Heroku. That was a great thing. I mean, everybody knows my love for Heroku from a prototyping and actually operational perspective. It's those kinds of things at Salesforce, but did the CTO even have any real say in that? Probably not. Because those were all business plays. Most of them were business plays, at least.
I don't know the internal situation of Salesforce, so I cannot really say for sure.
I don't either. Yeah.
Those are the types of purchases and decisions that actually CTO is making or should be making.
Should be making, yes.
Exactly. And that's why that there is that difference between CTO of a small company and CTO of a big company, because we are now making, you're a chief technology whatever, that is not actually figuring out how to build what would be the great new feature. You're trying to figure out which company to buy for many millions of dollars.
Right. All right. So let me ask this question, because this is rumbling in my head. A smaller company CTO, or let me make the statement and then tell me if I'm even ballpark or not. A smaller company CTO tends to be more tactical, whereas a mid to larger company tends to be more strategic.
What was the first you said? Technical or
tactical? Tactical. More. So they're not, even though they may be thinking some big picture, really they're just trying to get things shipped and keeping it stable so they can get to the freemium model to start paying, to get to the paying models. Versus a CTO at a larger or institutional company, they're just trying to keep the pieces moving and looking at acquisitions.
Exactly. And looking at so it's about the level, looking at a much bigger picture. When what you're looking is a feature is different than when what you're looking is an application than when you're looking into a whole ecosystem. And then you're acquiring companies because you need a product or because you want to kill the product. Those are highly complex decisions that are not really that technical.
Could we go out? Well, we've already been on a lot of limbs today, but can we go on a limb that really a CTO position at a super large company, institutional size companies, is really just a waste of time? It's a waste of a role?
I wouldn't say a waste of time. You need somebody technical to make those decisions.
How many CTOs, though, at large institutionals do you know that are actually technical?
Some. I mean, most of CTOs I know are terribly bad at their job, which is probably for a different episode. I mean, it is a technical role, but it's the same thing like a difference between a developer and a good, not majority, but a good architect, right? Both are very technical, but looking at different level of complexities and implementation and so on and so forth. Same thing with CTOs, I think. It should be technical. It must be technical. And that's where many companies are failing. But that is only a part. You need to combine with the business decision, with corporate decisions, need to align many different things that are not really anymore about was this function nicely written and does it introduce any technical depth. That type of technical is out of the picture. But technical as if we are going to go to cloud, not because we want to be in cloud, but because we need a distributed system that will combine all that X, Y, Z. That's still a technical decision. We're going to acquire Heroku. Now, there is a possibility because we want to kill it, which is probably not unlikely in Salesforce, but we're going to acquire Heroku because we need this huge capability being tiny part of our machine, right? So I'm making a decision to add something that is bigger than what most CTOs do or manage, and yet that huge thing is a tiny piece, tiny element, almost insignificant by itself.
Well, and especially just for what we'll call it the acquirer. But for the acquiree, it's huge. That could have been the last thing that kept them from shutting down.
Yes.
And we're back to our beginning, and we're not saying that either one of them would have shut down, but we're back to Xebia and CollabNet merging. There's been, a couple of press releases, actually a lot of press releases about it. We don't have any details, but it's not an abnormal pattern to see. There's always consolidation, and you can guarantee the CTOs were talking to each other during that time.
Yeah. Somebody needed to expand their portfolio, and expansion is so much easier by acquiring something that is at least partly successful than building your own. Chances are, if you try to build your own second product, you're going to have to build at least 10 until you find out what works.
Acquiring, it's easier to find out fast. Okay, that's a good place to stop. I think we stayed in the safe bounds today.
I didn't swear today.
You didn't swear. I don't think we crossed over any lines. I hope we didn't cross over any lines. I'm sure we did, but if we did, we apologize.
There is always a hidden motivation in what we speak about that we don't mention directly. It's up to people to figure it out.
Yeah. But sometimes that subtext is just a subtext to the larger general population. These are just, it's the Xebia CollabNet thing just sort of popped up a couple ideas. And I was like, oh, let's talk about this. But that's okay. Now, if you are listening via Apple Podcast, please go ahead and subscribe and leave a rating and review. All of our contact information, including Twitter and LinkedIn. If you're not following us on Twitter, or you can't say friending on LinkedIn. I don't even know what you say on LinkedIn. Anyway, all of our information can be found at devopsparadox.com/contact. If you'd like to be notified by email when a new episode is released, you can sign up at devopsparadox.com. The sign-up form is at the top of every page. There are links to the Slack workspace, the Voxer account, and how to leave a review in the description of this episode. And if you don't know what any of those things are, just click on those links and you'll find out. Any final words for today? It's mid-February when this releases. Unless you're in the southern hemisphere, it's cold. I don't care where you are, it's just plain cold. In the northern hemisphere anyway. If it's not cold where you are, be thankful.
It's not cold where I am.
Where are you now in the, let's see, middle of February, you are now where? It's February 12th. Where are you?
Where I'm home, Barcelona, but it's like 20 degrees Celsius. And
Oh,
now
but I'm not saying today.
Transcript.
Okay, see, we're having to break the fourth wall again. We're recording on January 23rd. February
January
12th. Today's February. Okay, today is February 12th. Play along with me here. Come on.
I know.
on
It's just
February
that time travel confuses me all the time. It's very confusing.
Are you saying that time travel does not exist because it confuses you?
I'm not sure about that, but it's confusing.
Okay. Anyway, Victor's probably on the road. So if when you're listening to this, I think Victor is on the road every day in February.
Yes, I'll be somewhere.
Not home. Let's put it that way, because you're always somewhere.
Home, yes.
You're just not home. So if you see Victor out at any of his, we got to get an events calendar up on the, where in the world is Victor?
Where is Waldo?
Where's Waldo? Where's Carmen Sandiego? All the whereas. You need to get a striped shirt like Waldo. We need to come up with a Victor look. Anyway, we're just rambling here at the end. Do you have anything else? This was sort of a somber episode, right? Not highly technical, but I think we both said our piece about some of the things that we think about the CTO role as somebody moves through the ranks. I like a CTO role. I think it's a wise thing. But when you have a completely non-technical person end up in a CTO role, that's when things go bad. And we didn't really talk about that.
One of the next episodes, we will.
Hopefully we don't have to talk about that. Hopefully that's just plain and simple. But it isn't always for companies. But anyway. That's it?
That's it.
I guess so. That's it. All right. Thanks again for listening to episode number 42 of DevOps Paradox.